I am talking Orlando Magic today. Some people think that the biggest story this year so far is the Cleveland Cavaliers or the Oklahoma City Thunder, maybe the Detroit Pistons, maybe the Houston Rockets. I'm here to tell them they're wrong. It is the Orlando Magic. Orlando is second place in the Eastern Conference right now. They've won 6 straight without their All-Star Paolo Banchero. And there's a clear and obvious primary reason for that. It is the emergence of early season MVP candidate Franz Wagner. Franz has been completely absurd this year. He actually quite literally does everything. It's crazy. Like I mean, I'm going to talk about how he's been able to lead this team so effectively and what makes him, a way too early in the season MVP candidate and an obvious all NBA level player. But I will say there were a lot of questions about Franz as to whether he could scale up. So, meaning taking on a primary initiation role, whether, he could really take up that step forward and lead a team in the absence of Paolo Banchero. And what do you know? They had this opportunity with Paolo Banchero going out and probably is going to be out until at least around Christmas. They had this sort of open question that we are going to find out the answer to. And, his first game kind of in that role wasn't the best. And then we see the Magic now rattle off 6 with Franz being dominant. Honestly, dominant is the only way to describe it. We couldn't question his impact before. Obviously, we knew from every way that we could measure impact that Franz would be an elite wing in this league regarding his impact, his ability to help his team win on both ends. That was already well known. There was no question about that. But on the ball, what can he do? And we see this year that as Franz goes, so do the Magic. They are 15.6 points better per 100 possessions when he is on the court than when he's off the court. That's a huge swing. He has been first or second on the team in on-off since his rookie season among any players that play at least 1,000 minutes in the season. That's 4 consecutive years. He is currently number 4 in the entire NBA in B-Ball Index's one-number metric, LeBron, which attempts to quantify his overall impact on the game. This is a pretty nice top 10, I think, for Franz to be in. Jason Tatum, Nikola Jokic, SGA, Franz, and Luka Doncic. So, that's his company right now. That alone should really give you a sense of what he's doing this year. But again, Franz is unique from the rest of these guys that I just mentioned because any player who is in that top 5 is in that top 15. The only player who's in that top 5 or in the top 15 who is top 15 in both offensive and defensive impact in the entire league is Franz Wagner. He does it on both ends. He does everything. He does everything at least decently well, and some things he does exceptionally well. And that is why he's so good. He's just not flashy at any one individual thing, but does everything at such a high level that his overall game is again, like I said, dominant. It's just not in the way that we are typically used to thinking about what dominance looks like. For me, anyway, the thing that jumps out the most this year, and it has to for most people who watch the Magic, is the playmaking. He is literally elite across the board in metrics around, playmaking talent, creating open shots for teammate, his efficiency, given his volume of passing. Obviously, if you're asked to, take on more creation responsibilities, you're more likely to turn the ball over more. That's just normal. It just makes more sense. You're passing the ball more. You're making more decisions. You're thinking through the game more. You're making split-second decisions, and you just have the ball more often. Franz somehow is currently posting his lowest turnover rate of his entire career while posting his highest assist percentage by far in his entire career. That's just not even supposed to happen. That's simply not supposed to happen. This is something that Paolo Banchero had struggled with. Like, you typically can't do everything. Like, it makes sense. You can't be elite at everything. You can't be an elite creator and not turn it over and knock down threes and get to the rim and get to the line and generate steals and be an excellent wing stopper and help control the defensive boards. But somehow Franz can do it all. It doesn't make sense. Actually, my co-host Geoff, who is not here right now, and I have been texting about this, and we were like, well, especially when Paolo first went out, and Geoff was like, well, maybe Franz and Suggs, they're not going to be as good defenders because the creation burden is so much more on their plate, and maybe Paolo was doing a bunch to lift that burden off their plate just by taking on so much of the creation opportunities and burden that they could really focus in their energy on the defense. And rationally, that makes a ton of sense. You're able to conserve. You only have a certain amount of energy throughout an NBA game, and if you're able to conserve it on the offensive end, you can expend it on the defensive end. When you have to expend it on the offensive end, you probably have to conserve it on the defensive end. This is very rational. It's sort of deductive. This doesn't seem to apply to Franz Wagner. He's able to do both and do it all at 23 years old, and this is someone who we've seen sustain a high level in terms of his impact, in terms of his on-off, in terms of his performance defensively across his entire career. This is not coming out of nowhere. This is just the next level for him that makes sense in terms of his ascendance to the top of the league, honestly. And maybe it doesn't seem sustainable entirely. I buy that it's not entirely sustainable, especially this season at 23 years old. I could see him getting back to this point maybe at 26, 27. But even with some drop off, is he a top 20 player in the NBA? I think that's where I have him landing, honestly. Like, I think I see him as a perennial all-star level player because we know he can definitely slot in next to another strong initiator based on his huge sample size next to Paolo. And we are learning that he can be a high level, if not elite initiator himself. It's just too much talent for a person who just turned 23 years old a couple of months ago. I don't think this is a blip. I think this is real, what we're seeing from Franz. And, the two guys that I personally was highest on in taking an all-NBA leap coming into this year were LaMelo Ball and Franz Wagner. And we're seeing it for both of them. But obviously, I am even surprised that we're seeing it even more clearly with Franz in the early going than we even are with LaMelo. I do want to say, though, I've talked a lot about Franz, and because I've just been so high on him across his career and moving forward, especially coming into this year, but the Magic are not a one-player team. They're really not. They are awesome, and that is because of their absurd defense and clear defensive identity. They are shutting down everyone. They end every possession with a strong defensive rebound, number one in the NBA in defensive rebounding, and they generate a ton of turnovers. So you're talking about a team who it's already difficult to get a shot up against them. When you do get a shot up against them, it's probably a contested shot. And then you're not getting another one if you miss the shot. And sometimes you might just turn it over and not even get a shot. It's of course, it's an amazing formula for an elite defense. And also in terms of the shot diet that they allow to opponents, they give up very few threes. They're in the top third of the league in terms of giving up shots at the rim. It's a completely absurd formula for defense, and they are showing that without Paolo, more defensive-minded guys are playing more minutes, and those guys are really holding their own and pulling their weight, and it is making the Magic look like an unstoppable defensive force. I want to talk about Kentavious Caldwell-Pope because my sense is that some Magic fans are upset about KCP because they paid him and his shooting hasn't really been there to start. I understand that he's been shooting really poorly. I don't have his percentage right in front of me, but I know it's bad. But he's been tremendous defensively. His switchability has been a flawless add. His point of attack defense perfectly complements Jalen Suggs. Even on the other end, his passing and ball movement as a connector, I think, has been very good. Franz is able to throw these perfect passes to guys coming off screens. It's always kind of in the right spot. It's leading them or hitting them in stride. And KCP has kind of a tiny little bit of that as a connector, even though he's not anywhere near the initiator of Franz. He's not going to initiate. But when he gets the ball and he has to get it to the next guy in the right spot, he does a great job of that. So I really like what I've seen from KCP, and his shooting's just going to turn around. Obviously, he's a career, I think, 37% three-point shooter. His shooting's going to turn around. We know that for sure. And then Jalen Suggs is obviously an animal on the defensive end. In my opinion, probably the most fun watch of any perimeter defender in the league, just in terms of his activity, the effort that he puts in every possession, and there is never He's got that one. I'll get him next time. There's no get him next time for Jalen Suggs. There's always, I'll get them right now, which makes him so much fun to watch. Anthony Black is like a sicko on defense too. It's just a bunch of like sicko defenders. It's crazy. And so to me, obviously projecting forward, looking forward, we'll care about. The big question is, can they continue to stay afloat by being an elite defense without Paolo? And then where will they actually end up at a peak level when Paolo is back? If he's actually back by Christmas, we're talking another 13, 14 games. Definitely a ton of winnable games, but also some really tough games. We're talking about games against the Knicks, the Thunder, the Celtics, the Lakers, who have been surprisingly really, really good. The Clippers, who are no pushover either. So then when Paolo gets back, where will the team be? Obviously they're streaking right now, but who knows? That I could easily see them kind of going 500 over this stretch, maybe a little above. And then when Paolo gets back, what will the team look at like in that situation? You have to reincorporate Paolo Banchero. It's going to look completely differently offensively. I believe they'll be better. Are they going to be as good defensively? Some of the challenge of building around Paolo is that he can't add as much off the ball as a guy like Franz because his defense hasn't been on that level. He's not as good a cutter. He can be a little bit of a ball stopper at times. So can Paolo add to his off-ball impact? That's an open question, but if he can, this Magic team could actually be a low-level contender already in the East with this Franz emergence. We're talking about potentially the best wing duo, not just in the East, but in the entire NBA, if Franz is able to continue to play at this level and Paolo is able to take the step that I think a lot of people projected for him and that I feel like we started to see early in the season in his first few games. So yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at with Orlando. I'm super excited to see where they go moving forward. I've had a lot of arguments with Magic fans because I've talked about Franz, and I basically feel like I've been at a point where I'm like convincing Magic fans how good Franz is because Magic fans really believe in Paolo Banchero. And I don't want to pit those two guys against each other. I just think that people really haven't been seeing how good Franz has been in his career and how good he can be. So I'm really excited that he's had the opportunity, and I'm excited to see what happens to Orlando. I live in Florida. I live in Jacksonville. So if, it's good for me if Orlando's really good because I can just drive down 2 hours and watch a bunch of games, especially that Knicks, when they play the Knicks, I'll probably be out there. So I'm excited to see what happens with Orlando. That's pretty much it. Just a short one for you today with my brilliant co-host Geoff out on vacation, but please go ahead and subscribe if you haven't. We talk about all NBA teams. We break down the game with analytics and film, all of the best and most effective tools to understand the game and what's going on. We try to use all of those, and we're building a really cool community of people who are just interested in challenging conventional norms and really diving into evidence as to why things are true and kind of challenging everything that you hear and really wanting to understand the game at a deep level. So until then, I'll see you back here next week, and I'm XJ, and this has been Hot Hand Theory.